go back out to the audience now. I'm going to take there are a couple of questions over here.
Hiya, I just really want to challenge this idea that the green view is the conventional view. I was at Copenhagen last year at the climate conference, and I spent the whole year basically talking to people about it. You know, within green circles, yes, obviously people care, and people will, stand and listen to you for a while. And yes, the politicians talk about it and commission reports, but when it comes down to actual real action that would change the way that things currently are, so if vested interests like fossil fuels come up against new green technology, say, they seem to lose out nearly every time. There was, I think it was last month, some statistics came out about how big the current government subsidies for fossil fuel industries compared to renewable industries. And it's like coppers compared to what's going into the fossil fuels. And it's the same with like tax on fuel on airplanes. There's hardly any compared to tax on fuel on, say, public transport like buses. So I just really want to challenge that view, because people seem to think that governments have got it in hand, it's all going to be okay. I really don't think that's the case, and I think that the job's not won yet by a long shot.
Okay, thank you. Just here.
I'm an environmentalist, certainly not of any elite kind of brand of environmentalist. I have an indoor toilet, but that could change tomorrow. Nice if it was a composting toilet. But, I'd just like to know how you build into your economic growth future biodiversity.
Thank you. Yeah.
Hi. I'd just like you to take up the point on reckoning, Jonathan. Well, I guess you're meaning a day of reckoning, I should imagine. It's very much a Christian tradition of there being one day, Judgment Day, Day of Reckoning, followed by Armageddon, etc. And with there being an increasingly agnostic society, do we need, with us, with a sort of almost a genetic code, our upbringing, generations, we're used to the myth of Armageddon, the Christian myth. Has the environmental myth of Judgment Day taken its place in an agnostic society, and therefore, are you playing God?
Okay, thank you. There's a chap here. Yeah.
So I wanted to ask two questions, but they're both fairly short, essentially the same question. So Jonathan, you talked about limits to growth. So what I would like to know is, when do you think growth is good growth? How do we tell the difference between those limits that we should accept and the ones that we should attack and try to work our way around? And Daniel, I want to ask you the same question but backwards, which is, you're a big fan of economic growth, but do you think growth is necessarily an unalloyed good? I mean, do you think it's all growth is good growth? And what kinds of economic growth do you think are bad?
Okay, thank you.
Yes, I'd like to come back to this idea of growth being possible in an unlimited way. It's an amazing thought. As an engineer, and you're taking an engineering approach, if we took, let's just say, for example, population in Britain has doubled in my lifetime. When I was born, it was a bit over 30 million. It's now 60. And it's going to go a bit over 70, 72, 75 by the year 2050. Let's not bother to think about limits at all. Could I ask you, have you no thought as to what would be a reasonable population for Britain? England, for example, now is the most densely populated country in Europe. We've overtaken Holland. And similarly, on a global scale, we're now 6 billion. In 2050, there will be 9 billion in the world. We're not interested in limits. But just as a matter of curiosity, how many billions do you think the world, have you no thought of any limit at all? 20 billion, 30 billion? Should we have 200 million in Britain? The Guardian published an article a few months ago about refugees from war across the planet, and there were, I think, about getting on for 1 billion of displaced people. We're a very sympathetic country, this, and we do let refugees in, which I absolutely agree with. On the other hand, should we take this total 1 billion into Britain? What are your thoughts on these things?
Okay, thank you.
Thank you. Hello. I've found what Daniel's been saying is almost completely sort of conceptual, really, with very little basis in reality, without many real examples as to how his ideas might work out in practice. I mean, 2 points, really, specifically. The idea that growth will automatically improve equality is when you know, in the last 200 years of industrial growth and economic growth, it's not done so, and economic elites have control of most of the resources, and poor people have got poorer, and inequality gaps have grown. You've got many countries around the world which are developing rapidly economically, where inequality gaps are growing. The other thing is that why should consumption, and I'm talking about growth in consumption now as opposed to growth economically generally, why growth in consumption should always mean an improved lifestyle, and why is growth in consumption such a desirable thing? I mean, you know, if people, is it such a desirable thing to live in the sort of, I know it's a stereotypical example, a sort of a cliche, but is it such a desirable thing to live in a huge house surrounded by hedges, detached from your neighbours, driving a car, not walking anywhere? I mean, why is it immediately that consumption, conspicuous consumption, should mean such a great life? And I'd like some sort of clarification on that, really.
Okay, I'm just going to take one more from over here. There are some people who have already spoken wanting to come back in, but I'm going to bring the panel back in first, and then we'll see how much time we've got left.
I don't know if I'm allowed to respond to that last point, but just in relation to the last point, I would love a far bigger house with lovely big hedges and a big garden. I think that would be ideal, really improve my lifestyle. I've got a question. Jonathon made a comment about, there was a question at the back about CFCs and about acid rain. And Jonathon made the point that they've not been talked about for some time because environmentalists campaigned against them, and you know, by arguing certain things, we were, as a society, we were able to kind of overcome them. And I'm not sure about all the signs of it, but we're able to overcome those environmental issues and environmental problems that existed in the past. Now, there seems to be agreement between Jonathon and Daniel that there are environmental issues. I think both of them said that in their speech. So if we were able to overcome those environmental issues, surely, you know, we should be able to overcome environmental issues which exist at the moment. And I just wondered if both speakers could perhaps comment on that.
Okay, thank you.